Good evening, everyone. Distinguished guest, Shri Jogin Chaudhary, Shukryoshin, ladies and gentlemen, friends, colleagues, team members, on behalf of the Kolkata Partition Museum Trust, I welcome all of you to this evening's program, which is basically the launch of a virtual museum, the virtual Kolkata Partition Museum. We are going to actually start with the lighting of a lamp, an electric lamp, unfortunately, that is all we could manage. And then our MC for the evening will give a short introductory speech, and we will invite our guests to say a few words. And then the major event, which is the launch, which is a team presentation actually, will commence. So I would request Shri Jogin Chaudhary and Shukriyo to please come on stage. And I would also request, all the members of the trust are present today. I cannot see Tapoti Di. I don't know whether she's arrived. She was supposed to by 5:30. I would like a member of the trust and a member of the team also to come and join at the lighting of the lamp. So Joyantota and Anindita, I would request you to come, please.
যা কিছু আমার চারপাশে ছিল, ঘাস পাতর, সরীসৃপ, ভাঙা মন্দির, যা কিছু আমার চারপাশে ছিল, নির্বাসন, কথামালা, একলা সূর্যাস্ত, যা কিছু আমার চারপাশে ছিল, ধ্বংস, তীরবল্লম, ভিটেমাটি, সমস্ত একসঙ্গে কেঁপে ওঠে পশ্চিম মুখে। স্মৃতি যেন ধীরযত্রী, দলদঙ্গল, ভাঙা বাক্স পড়ে থাকে আম গাছের ছায়ায়, এক পা ছেড়ে অন্য পায়ে হঠাৎ বাস্তবহীন। যা কিছু আমার চারপাশে আছে, শিয়ালদা, ভর দুপুর, উল্কি দেওয়াল, যা কিছু আমার চারপাশে আছে, কানাবলি, স্লোগান, মনিউমেন্ট, যা কিছু আমার চারপাশে আছে, সরসজ্জা, ল্যাম্পপোস্ট, লাল গঙ্গা, সমস্ত একসঙ্গে ঘিরে ধরে মজ্জার অন্ধকার। তার মধ্যে দাঁড়িয়ে বাজে জল তরঙ্গ, চূড়োয় শূন্যে তুলে ধরে হাওড়া ব্রিজ, পায়ের নিচে গড়িয়ে যায় আবহমান। যা কিছু আমার চারপাশে ঝর্ণা, উড়ন্ত চুল, উদম পথ, ঝড়ো মশাল, যা কিছু আমার চারপাশে স্বচ্ছ, ভোরের শব্দ, স্নাত শরীর, শ্মশান শিব, যা কিছু আমার চারপাশে মৃত্যু, এক একদিন, হাজার দিন, জন্মদিন, সমস্ত একসঙ্গে ঘুরে আসে স্মৃতির হাতে। অল্প আলোয় বসে থাকা পথভিখারী, যা ছিল আর যা আছে দুই পাথর ঠুকে জ্বালিয়ে নেয় এতদিনের পুনর্বাসন। A very good evening to one and all present here. A couple of days ago, we celebrated the 75th Independence Day of our nation. The year 1947 marks not only the year of independence from the British Raj, but also the partition of a land that took pride in coexisting peacefully whilst upholding values of fraternity. The aftermath of partition was a most gruesome one. There was crime, there was bloodshed, there was inhumanity, there was insanity on both the western and eastern borders of India. The partition in the West has now been memorialized in a museum in Amritsar. There is an urgent need to do the same for the experience of the East. The Kolkata Partition Museum project, KPMP, initiated by Dr. Rituparna Roy and steered by the KPM Trust, aims to do just that. We have gathered here today to launch the virtual avatar of KPM, the V-KPM, 4 years into KPMT's birth as an organization and 3.5 years into its presence in the cultural scene of Kolkata. The V-KPM is a collaboration between KPMT and AUR, Architecture Urbanism Research, an architecture firm with offices in New York and New Delhi, headed by Aurgho Jyoti, an Indian architect living in the US and India. The virtual Kolkata Partition Museum team will give a presentation today, giving us details of its content and glimpses into its unique design. We look forward to it with bated breath, but before that, We would like to invite our distinguished guests, veteran artist Jogin Chaudhary and eminent filmmaker Supriyo Sen, to share their thoughts with us. We would first like to invite Shri Jogin Chaudhary on the stage. Shri Jogin Chaudhary is a celebrated painter who is an inspiration for the young budding painters of our country. Born in 1939 in Daharpara, a village in Faridpur district of Bangladesh, Chaudhary is known for appropriately painting the rot and the pain that is an innate part of the human existence. He studied at the Government College of Art and Craft, Kolkata, and École Nationale Supérieure des Beaux-Arts, Paris. Chaudhary is widely acknowledged for being the master of the unbroken line. R. Sivakumar had praised him by saying that the pulse and the rhythm of Jogin Chaudhary's art comes from a filial affinity to nature and milieu. Political unrest, immigrants and refugees found space in Chaudhary's canvas, and with the use of bold strokes, he portrayed the plight of those who left Bangladesh post-partition and preferred the technique of using black ink and cross-hatchings to appropriately portray the dark aftermath of the partition. His artworks chronicle the Shialda experiences. He worked as a textile designer in the Handloom Board in Chennai and was later appointed as the chief curator at the Art Gallery of Rashtrapati Bhavan, New Delhi. He also founded the Gallery 26 Arts Forum in New Delhi. Shri Jogin Chaudhary has received a number of accolades like the Prole France de l'Aurgho Jyoti and Bangla Vibhushan. He divides his time between Shantiniketan and Kolkata, where he has an art center called Charu Basana. He is an extremely busy person and we are extremely grateful to have him with us. Sir, we would like you to come up on stage and praise us. And sir, I would like to take this opportunity to felicitate you.
নমস্কার। ভার্চুয়াল পার্টিশন মিউজিয়ামের বিষয়ে আমি কিছুই খুব জানতাম না, এই কদিন আগেই জেনেছি যখন শ্রীমতী ঋতুপর্ণা রয় আমাকে যোগাযোগ করেছিলেন ফোনে, তারপর থেকে। তবে এই বিষয়ে আমি জানি দিল্লি থেকে আমাকে কন্ট্যাক্ট করেছিলেন আমাদের এক বন্ধু। তিনি ওখানে চণ্ডীগড়ে একটি মিউজিয়াম হয়েছে, পার্টিশন মিউজিয়াম, সেটা ফিজিক্যাল একদম, সেটা ভার্চুয়াল নয়। সেই ক্ষেত্রে আমি তারা আমাকে যোগাযোগ করে এবং আমার নিজের আঁকা শিয়ালদা স্টেশনের ছবি, রিফিউজিদের ছবি, দুটি ছবি আমি তাদের মিউজিয়ামে ডোনেট দিয়েছি। তারা কিনে নিয়েছে, ডোনেট করেনি, তারা কিনে নিয়েছে। সুতরাং তারা অনেকটা এগিয়ে গিয়েছে, কারণ এখানে এখনো মিউজিয়ামের অবস্থাটি ভার্চুয়াল অবস্থাতে রয়েছে। আশা করি ইন কোর্স অফ টাইম আমরাও এখানে একটি ফিজিক্যাল মিউজিয়াম তৈরি করতে পারবো, সেরকম আশা করি। এবং ভার্চুয়াল মিউজিয়ামের মধ্য দিয়ে যতটা এগিয়ে যাওয়া যায়, সমস্ত ইনফরমেশন সব কিছু নিশ্চয়ই দেখানো যেতে পারে। তার মধ্য দিয়ে আমাদের যে পার্টিশনের সামগ্রিক ইতিহাস এবং আমাদের যে তার পরবর্তী যেসব ঘটনা এবং আমাদের জীবনযাত্রার সমস্ত অবস্থা, যারা বিশেষ করে পার্টিশনের সময় ওদিক থেকে ইস্ট বেঙ্গল থেকে দেশে এসছেন, তাদের সম্পর্কে সমস্ত নথিপত্র সব কিছু রাখা যেতে পারে তার মধ্যে। আর এটাও ঠিক যে একই সঙ্গে পার্টিশনের ফলে ওদেশ থেকে, বাংলাদেশ থেকে, পূর্ববঙ্গ থেকে, যেমন বাংলাদেশ নয় তখন পূর্ববঙ্গ, সেখান থেকে যারা এসছেন এখানে, তারাও যেমন নানান অসুবিধার মধ্যে আস্তে আস্তে তারা জীবনযাপন করে এখন কিছুটা প্রতিষ্ঠিত হয়েছেন, সেরকম এখান থেকেও অনেকে ওদেশে গিয়েছেন। সেরকম অনেক, আমি বাংলাদেশে প্রায় ইতিমধ্যে অন্তত 8-10 বার গিয়েছি এবং সেখানে আমার সমস্ত শিল্পী বন্ধুরা আমার খুব পরিচিত এবং আমি ওখানকার মানুষজন, শিল্পী, সাহিত্যিক সবার সঙ্গে আমার পরিচয় আছে। সুতরাং আজকে এরকম মনে হয় না যে আমরা সেই পার্টিশনের মধ্যে আছি। এটাই একটা সব থেকে আজকে আনন্দের কথা, কারণ আমরা যে পার্টিশনের কারণে দেশ ছেড়ে আসার ফলে যে বিচ্ছিন্ন হয়ে গিয়েছিলাম, সেই জায়গাটা আমার মনে হয় এখন আগের মতো নেই। এখন আমাদের বিশেষ করে শিল্পী, সাহিত্যিক, তাদের যোগাযোগের ক্ষেত্রটা কিন্তু যথেষ্ট গভীর। আর আমি ব্যক্তিগতভাবে একটু এক্সাইটেড ছিলাম বিষয়টি নিয়ে, সেই কারণে আমি অসুবিধা সত্ত্বেও আমার ঠিক 6টার সময় আমি একটা মিটিংয়ে যাওয়ার কথা ছিল, ক্যালকাটা পেইন্টার্সের মিটিং। সেইখানে আমি বলেছি একটু পরে যাব, 1 ঘন্টা লেট হতে পারে। তো ওদেরও 6টায় শুরু, এখান থেকে যেতে 1/2 ঘন্টা তো লাগবেই। আর আমি সেই কারণে বেশি কথা বলতে চাই না, শুধু এইটুকু বলতে চাই যে এই উদ্যোগকে আমি সম্পূর্ণ আন্তরিকভাবে সমর্থন করি এবং ভবিষ্যতে যতটুকু যা করার সেই কাজ বা তার সঙ্গে যুক্ত হয়ে যতটুকু করার সেই কাজে যুক্ত থাকতে চাই। এবং আমার মনে হয় যে এমন একটা কিছু করা, যেমন কিছু একটা করলাম কিন্তু সেই কাজটি সম্পূর্ণভাবে করা দরকার। অর্থাৎ এর যে রূপ হবে সেই সম্পূর্ণ রূপে প্রকাশিত হওয়া দরকার। এই ভার্চুয়াল মিউজিয়াম অবস্থায় থাকার জায়গায় এটা আস্তে আস্তে একদম একটি বাড়ির মধ্যে এর সমস্ত জিনিসপত্র রেখে এটা ফিজিক্যাল মিউজিয়াম যাতে হয়ে ওঠে, সেই দিকে আমাদের ভাবতে হবে। এবং যারা উৎসাহী আছেন তারা সবাই যদি এগিয়ে আসেন, আমার মনে হয় এটা করতে বিশেষ অসুবিধা হবে না এবং সরকারও নিশ্চয়ই আমাদের সাহায্য করবে। একটু বলতে পারি, এই বলে আমি সমস্ত আমার ব্যক্তিগত শুভেচ্ছা এবং এই প্রজেক্টটির প্রতি আমার সমস্ত আন্তরিকতা প্রকাশ করে আজকে আমার বক্তব্য শেষ করছি। নমস্কার।
Thank you, sir, for your kind words. Up next, I would like to take this opportunity to introduce Shri Supriyo Sen. Shri Supriyo Sen is a gifted independent filmmaker. His works of art are deeply invested in the theme of partition. His feature documentary on the partition of India, called Way Back Home, is the first Indian documentary that was commercially released. This film is called a road movie in not just a physical sense, but also in a mental sense, transcending the viewers to the memories of the past. His other films like Aurgho, that won the Berlin Today Award, and Hope Dies Last, that received the National Film Award for Best Non-Feature Film, also depict the theme of partition. It is through the art of filmmaking that Shri Supriyo Sen journeys back to his roots in Bangladesh and unites with his ancestral identity. Sen has served as a juror at various film festivals, including the Busan International Film Festival, Taiwan International Documentary Festival, DMZ Documentary Festival at Korea, amongst others. He has also made his foray in the arena of commercial cinema through his feature Tangra Blues that came out last year. It is an honor to have him with us. Sir, I would request you to say a few words, and before that I would like to take an opportunity to felicitate you.
নমস্কার। ছবি এবং মানে সিনেমার এই মিডিয়ামটার কাজের সূত্রে একদিকে যেমন ইতিহাস পাঠ করার কিছু কিছু সুযোগ ঘটেছে, যেটা ছাত্র জীবনে সেভাবে ঘটেনি। ঠিক একইভাবে পৃথিবীর বিভিন্ন দেশে ছবি দেখানোর সূত্রেই হয়তো যাবার সুযোগ হয়েছে। স্পেশালি পশ্চিমের দেশগুলোতে যখন ব্যক্তিগতভাবে বিভিন্ন অনুষ্ঠানে বা ট্রাভেল করতেই গেছি, যেটা সবচেয়ে গুরুত্বপূর্ণ একটা জিনিস দেখতাম প্রতিটি শহরে বা সেই শহরের নাগরিক বা কোনো পার্টিকুলার রাষ্ট্রের নাগরিক তাদের অতীত সম্পর্কে সচেতনতা। ইউরোপের এক একটা বড় সিটি ইজ ভেরি ফেমাস ফর দেয়ার মিউজিয়ামস। সেখানে তাদের কালেকটিভ মেমোরি তার রেস্টোর করে। একটা মিউজিয়াম তো খালি কিছু প্রাচীন দ্রব্যের সংগ্রহশালা না, একটা মিউজিয়াম হচ্ছে লিভিং হিস্ট্রি। এবং একটা মিউজিয়াম শুধু ইনফরমেশন দেয় না, একটা মিউজিয়াম ইন্টারপ্রিটেশনের জায়গা তৈরি করে। এবং ইতিহাসকে ঘিরে যে চলমান বিতর্ক থাকে, ইতিহাসকে দেখার যে ব্যক্তিগত দৃষ্টিভঙ্গি থাকে, সাবজেক্টিভ পয়েন্ট অফ ভিউ, তার যে দ্বন্দ্ব, এই দ্বন্দ্বটাকে একটা মিউজিয়াম ধারণ করে, আর ধারণ করে স্মৃতিকে। আলেকজান্ডার ক্লুগার একটা বিখ্যাত কথা আছে যে no one can driven out us from the paradise of our memory. তো এই যে রিফিউজিদের হোমল্যান্ড হারানোর যে কষ্ট, এবং সেটা তো খালি কোনো ট্যাঞ্জিবল প্রপার্টি নয়, ইনট্যাঞ্জিবল হেরিটেজ, the art, the culture, the language, এবং the subtle nuances of life, the nature, the river, the forest. এই যে স্মৃতি, এই স্মৃতিকে যদি আমরা রক্ষা না করি, যদি ধারণ না করি, তাহলে আমাদের পক্ষে এগিয়ে যাওয়া মুশকিল। যেমন একটা জেনারেশন মনে করে বা করত যে পার্টিশনের সময় যে রক্তক্ষয়ী দাঙ্গা, যে আমরা যেটাকে বলি ভ্রাতৃঘাতী দাঙ্গা, যদিও এই যে পরিবারের মধ্যে ভাইয়ে ভাইয়ে সংঘাতই সবচেয়ে তীব্র আর রক্তাক্ত আকার ধারণ করতে পারে, সেটা একটা ইউনিট ফ্যামিলির থেকে আরম্ভ করে রাষ্ট্রের ক্ষেত্রেও তাই দেখা যায়। যার ফলে ভাতৃঘাতী দাঙ্গা কথাটাও খুব প্রাচীন, কারণ মানুষের মধ্যে এই টেন্ডেন্সি আছে তার প্রতিবেশীর সঙ্গে লড়াই করা, তার ভ্রাতাভগ্নির সঙ্গে লড়াই করা, ফর সেভারাল রিজনস। যার জন্যই বোধ হয় 10 কমেন্টসে বলতে হয় যে লাভ দাই নেইবার্স, অর্থাৎ প্রতিবেশীকে আমরা ভালোবাসি না বলেই তো মহাপুরুষদের লিখে যেতে হয় যে লাভ ইউর নেইবার্স। তো ঠিক একইভাবে এই ইতিহাস চর্চা করতে গিয়েও আমাদের অনেক ভ্রান্ত ধারণা আছে। এবং ব্রিটিশ কলোনিয়ালরা এসে অফকোর্স ধর্মকে ইউজ করেছে এবং তাদের শাসনের কাজে লাগিয়েছে, ডিভাইড অ্যান্ড রুল করেছে অবশ্যই, কিন্তু আমরাও ডিভাইডেড ছিলাম। আমাদের মধ্যে কাস্টিজম ছিল, আমাদের মধ্যে রিলিজিয়াস মেজর কমিউনিটির মধ্যে কনফ্লিক্ট ছিল, আমরা একসঙ্গে ছিলাম, এক ধরনের অ্যামালগামেশন ছিল, এক ধরনের কমন স্পেস ছিল, সেটা যেমন ছিল প্যারালালি এই ড্রিফটটাও ছিল। আজকে যখন দাঁড়িয়ে আমরা পার্টিশন নিয়ে আলোচনা করি, এই ধরনের উদ্যোগ হয়, তখন খুব নির্মোহভাবে আমাদের গোটা ইতিহাসটাকে দেখা উচিত। তো আমার মনে হয় এরকম একটা উদ্যোগ সেই স্পেসটা তৈরি করবে। আরেকটা ভীষণ ইম্পর্টেন্ট জিনিস আছে যে যদি একসময় মনে করা হতো, আমি যেটা বলছিলাম যে একটা প্রজন্ম মনে করতো যে এই 47-এর প্রজন্ম যারা ওই রক্তক্ষয়ী দাঙ্গা, দেশভাগ সব কিছু দেখেছে, সেই জেনারেশনটা আস্তে আস্তে মিলিয়ে যাওয়ার সাথে সাথে বুঝি এই যে পারস্পরিক অবিশ্বাস, ঘৃণার যে জায়গাটা, সেটাও আস্তে আস্তে মিলিয়ে যাবে। কিন্তু ঠিক যেভাবে দেশভাগ যখন হয়েছিল, আমি একটু আগে আলোচনা করতে আসছিলাম আমার এক বন্ধুর সঙ্গে, যে অনেক ঐতিহাসিকরা মনে করে যে যারা দেশভাগ করেছিলেন তারা নিজেরাও বিশ্বাস করতো না যে এই আলাদা দেশগুলো থেকে যাবে। কারণ কাছে এটা জাস্ট বার্গেনিং ইস্যু ছাড়া আর কিছুই ছিল না। কিন্তু অদ্ভুতভাবে ওরকম একটা অ্যাবসার্ডিটি রিয়েলিটি হয়ে আমাদের জীবনে থেকে গেল, এবং স্টিল উই আর সাফারিং ফ্রম দ্য ব্লান্ডার অফ দ্য হিস্ট্রি, যে আমাদের সাবকন্টিনেন্টে এখনো যে কনফ্লিক্ট চলছে, এবং যে কনফ্লিক্টের উপর দাঁড়িয়ে বিভিন্ন পলিটিক্যাল আউটফিট নতুন করে পাওয়ার ক্যাপচার করবার চেষ্টা করছে, তার উৎস সেই পার্টিশন বা তারও আগে। তো আমরা যখন এই ইতিহাসটাকে চর্চা করব, সেটা আমাদের বোঝা উচিত, মনে রাখা উচিত যে ইটস আ ভেরি ডাইনামিক হিস্ট্রি। এটা কোনো শুধুমাত্র মিউজিয়ামে রাখার জিনিস নয়, এটা নিয়ে ডিসকোর্স হওয়া উচিত। যে কারণে আমার মনে হয় একটা মানে ট্যাঞ্জিবল যে ধরনের মিউজিয়াম দেখি আমরা সাধারণত একটা ঘরের মধ্যে কিছু স্মৃতি সম্বলিত জিনিসপত্রের খুব একটা প্রায় ফসিলাইজড একটা শেপে বা ফর্মে অবস্থান করে, এবং সেখানে কোনো ইন্টারাকশনের সুযোগ নেই। সেরকম একটা জায়গায় দাঁড়িয়ে এরকম একটা ভার্চুয়াল মিউজিয়াম যদি একটা ইন্টারাকশনের সুযোগ করে দেয়, পৃথিবীর যে কোনো প্রান্ত থেকে যদি এটাকে অ্যাক্সেস করা যায়, এবং এখানে স্মৃতির যে রিপ্রেজেন্টেশন থাকে সেগুলো নিয়ে ডিবেট করা যায়, কন্ট্রিবিউট করা যায়, তাহলে আমার মনে হয় এরকম একটা মিউজিয়াম একটা ফিজিক্যাল মিউজিয়ামের থেকে অনেক বড় কাজ করতে পারে, এবং বিভিন্ন ফর্মের মধ্যে থেকে আমরা মেমোরিটাকে ধরে রাখতে পারি। এবং আমি সুতরাং এই উদ্যোগ, আমি জানি ঋতুপর্ণা দীর্ঘদিন ধরে এই উদ্যোগটাই শহরে নিয়ে যাচ্ছে। খুব দুঃখজনকভাবে পার্টিশনের মতো এত বড় ঘটনা খুব বেশি গবেষণা, খুব বেশি লেখালেখি যে পরিমাণে থাকা উচিত, যে পরিমাণে হলোকস্ট নিয়ে ইউরোপিয়ানরা বা ওয়েস্টার্ন ওয়ার্ল্ড দিনের পর দিন চর্চা করে গেছেন, ঘটনাচক্রে আবার পৃথিবীর এরকম কতগুলো জায়গায় যাওয়ার সুযোগ ঘটেছে যেখানে যে এক্সিবিশনটা মানুষকে বিভিন্নভাবে খুব ডিপলি অ্যাফেক্টেড করেছিল। যেমন আমি বার্লিন বর্ডার দেখেছি, সেখানে দিনের পর দিন থেকেছি, সেখানকার মানুষের সাইকি দেখেছি। আমি ওয়াঘা বর্ডার নিয়ে ছবি করেছি। আমি পাকিস্তানে গেছি, আমাদের ডিফারেন্সটা মানে পার্থক্য আর মিলের জায়গাটা কি, সেটা আমি যেমন বলার চেষ্টা করি যে আমাদের দেশে যদি এই যে রিলিজিয়াস ফান্ডামেন্টালিজমকে বুঝতে হয়, সেটা খালি একটা ভূখণ্ডে দাঁড়িয়ে বোঝা যাবে না। হয়তো বাংলাদেশেও ভিজিট করতে হবে, পাকিস্তানেও ভিজিট করতে হবে, সেখানে মানুষের সঙ্গে কথা বলতে হবে, এবং সামগ্রিকভাবে যদি ইন্ডিয়ান সাবকন্টিনেন্টের রেসপেক্টে আমরা পার্টিশনকে না দেখি, তাহলে এর পুরো দিকটা বুঝতে পারবো না। যে কারণেই আর কি যে পার্টিশনের হিস্ট্রিকে খুব মিসইউজ করবার সুযোগ আছে, যেভাবে হলোকস্টের হিস্ট্রিকে সেকশন অফ জিউ মিসইউজ করে প্যালেস্টাইন দখল করে ইসরায়েল তৈরি করেছে, ঠিক একইভাবে পার্টিশনের মেমোরিকে আমরা মিসইউজ করে অন্য ধরনের একটা এক্সট্রিমিজমের জন্ম দিতে পারি। সুতরাং সে ব্যাপারেও আমাদের খুব সতর্ক থাকা উচিত। আর আমার যেটা সবচেয়ে বেশি মনে হয় যে এই যে নেশন স্টেট তো খুব আধুনিক জিনিস, মানুষের বা প্রকৃতিতে রাষ্ট্র বলে কিছু ছিল না, কোনো মানচিত্র ছিল না, এবং আগামী দিন থাকবেও না। কিন্তু এই যে ট্রানজিশনাল ফেজের মধ্যে দিয়ে আমরা যাচ্ছি, এটা একটা ভয়ঙ্কর সময়। তো এই সময়ে দাঁড়িয়ে যে কোনো এই ধরনের উদ্যোগ, একটা সিনেমা, একটা গবেষণা, একটা সাহিত্য, একটা মিউজিয়াম, অনেক ডিবেট, অনেক আলোচনার পরিসর তৈরি করার পাশাপাশি যেন একটা রিকনসিলিয়েশনের স্পেস তৈরি করে। কারণ আমাদের কোএক্সিস্ট করতে হবে, আমাদের পাশাপাশি মানুষ হিসেবে থাকতে হবে। অফকোর্স কতগুলো রাষ্ট্র তৈরি হয়েছে, তার একটা হিস্টোরিক্যাল কম্পালশন আছে তাদের রাষ্ট্র হিসেবে থেকে যাওয়া, বাট উই ক্যান এক্সিস্ট অ্যাজ গুড নেইবার্স। আমি নিজে পার্সোনালি পাকিস্তানে গিয়ে দেখেছি, বাংলাদেশ গিয়ে দেখেছি, যে ছবিগুলো আমার মানে খুব খোলামেলাভাবে পার্টিশন নিয়ে কর তৈরি করা ছবি, যেখানে কোনো রাগঢাক আড়াল করার চেষ্টা করা হয়নি। সেই ছবিগুলো আমি দেখেছি যে ফরগেট অ্যাবাউট ইন্ডিয়া, ইন বাংলাদেশ, ইন পাকিস্তান, পিপল অ্যাপ্রিশিয়েটেড দ্য ফিল্ম। বাংলাদেশে আমি ওয়ে ব্যাক হোমের ফিল্ম মেকার হিসেবে আমার সারা বাংলাদেশে পরিচিতি আছে। তো সেখানে কিন্তু সোজা সাপটা করে আমার চোখে দেখা, আমি যেভাবে ইতিহাসকে বুঝি, একদম পার্সোনাল ন্যারেটিভ, যে পার্সোনালটা গিয়ে ব্রডার পলিটিক্যালকে কানেক্ট করার চেষ্টা করে। তো সে কথা বলার চেষ্টা করেছি, তার অ্যাকসেপ্টেন্স আছে। সবচেয়ে বড় যেটা আছে, যেটা করা যায়, সেটা হচ্ছে এই যে কালচারাল ইনিশিয়েটিভের মধ্য থেকে, যার মধ্যে মিউজিয়াম তৈরি করাও একটা পার্ট হয়, যে কালচার, আর্ট অ্যান্ড কালচার একমাত্র ব্রিজ তৈরি করতে পারে, কোনো ডিপ্লোমেসি দিয়ে, কোনো আর কিচ্ছু দিয়ে হবে না। আমরা ইতিহাস চর্চার মধ্যে থেকে এবং শিল্প সংস্কৃতির মধ্যে এই ব্রিজটা, এবং এই যে ব্রিজটা তৈরি করা যায়, যেটা যোগেন্দা একটু আগে বললেন, যদিও যোগেন্দা বলছিলেন যে আগের মতো সেই বিভাজন আর নেই, এটা ঠিক নয়, কারণ অ্যাকচুয়ালি আমরা এখন আরো বেশি বিভাজিত পার্টিশনের পরে, এবং সেটা ডিপেন্ড করে যে এক্সিস্টিং পলিটিক্যাল পাওয়াররা ওই মেমোরিকে কিভাবে ইউজ করছে। সুতরাং আমাদেরও ডিসাইড করতে হবে যে মেমোরিকে আমরা কিভাবে ব্যবহার করব। তো ইট ইজ ভেরি ইম্পর্টেন্ট যে আমরা যাই করি না কেন, সেটা সিনেমা হোক, সাহিত্য হোক, মিউজিয়াম হোক, সেটা যেন একটা রিকনসিলিয়েশন স্পেস তৈরি করে, সেটা যেন একটা কোএক্সিস্টেন্সের স্পেস তৈরি করে। আমার মনে হয় এই ধরনের উদ্যোগ তখনই সাকসেসফুল হবে। এই বলে আমি আমার বক্তব্য শেষ করছি।
The most, the team presentation proper is actually going to start with Aurgho's presentation a little while from now. I'm going to give introduction, more like a preface. And there are two sides, two parts to my preface. One is I'd like to talk a little bit about the journey of KPM so far, because this is happening like 3.5, 4 years into that journey. And I think at this very crucial moment, it's important that we look back and do a little bit of stock taking, especially for those who are coming to know about it for the very first time. And then of course I'll talk about V-KPM, but I'm basically going to say just a few things about the collaboration, a bit about the team members, and some of the challenges that we have faced in the process of the work that we have been doing and the way forward. So Kolkata Partition Museum is probably most of you know by now, because I see a lot of familiar faces. And as I was just saying, one of my friends that I get to see some faces only in August, and they're so kind. KPM is a project that aims to establish a Kolkata partition museum in Kolkata, focused on the experience of Bengal and the East, and it has two primary emphases: historical specificity and cultural continuity. Now we want to memorialize the specificity of Eastern India, Bengal, also Tripura, Assam, experience of partition in the most comprehensive manner possible. But we also want to remember and emphasize the cultural continuities between West Bengal and Bangladesh in terms of our living heritage, language, literature, food, fabric, the performative arts, which is not a small thing. Now, KPM has already been said, it's still at an early phase, and it is run by a trust. So I initiated the project and I happen to be the managing trustee of the trust, but all the members of the trust are present here today. The other members, Papatadike, আমি দেখতে পাচ্ছি না যদিও এখনো, like she was supposed to come. Jayanta is here, Jayanta Sengupta, Sri Abhijit Pathak, Srimati Nilina Chatterjee, and Professor Tapati Bhotakutta. So we were born, you could say, on 20th August 2018 when our organization, an NGO, was registered. But it was not until early to mid 2019 that we could actually start our so-called activity. And that we did after we kind of publicly announced ourselves at an event at Jagannath Bhavan, 26th February 2019. And it happened because of Tapadi's involvement with us. And the highlight, I had given a short presentation, and the highlight of the evening was Gautam Ghosh in conversation with Moina Vishwash, where they spoke about Gautam Das' connection with partition, both in life and work. And that very same year, in August, we had our first major physical event at Jagannath Bhavan once again, and once again, with the advice of with Gautam Ghosh as chief advisor. And it was a very unique event because it commemorated partition through films, including features and documentaries from both sides of the border. Quite a few in the audience were also part of that event, I remember. And our chief guests were Bangladeshi filmmakers Akram Khan and Tanvir Mukammal, who also did a masterclass at the end of that fest. Going forward, every August, since August is the big commemorative month for partition, almost every August we've had a major event. So 2020 we were planning to have an art exhibition, but the pandemic intervened, so it was an art exhibition, which is basically a group show about a group show with 5 contemporary artists and their take on partition. We have one of the artists here today, Dilip Mitra. He's come all the way from Shantiniketan, so this attests to his, his deep interest in our work and his association with us. Shupriyo is here. I'm so disappointed Shupriyo did not talk anything about the association that he and Rajashree has had with us. So 2019, his film was part of, his film was featured way back home because it's such an important documentary. But in 2019 itself, only Rajashree had conceived of this exhibition. In fact, even before the event happened, and 2020 we couldn't have it. Apart from Dilita, the other 4 artists were Paula Sengupta, Binoy Bhattacharya, Amrita Sen, and Debashish Mukherjee. We did a webinar in 2020 in lieu of the exhibition that couldn't be, but it became a reality last year in 2021 at the height of the second wave we were planning for it. And so it was very challenging, I remember. And so, Shupriyo and Rajashree have been part of this journey in a very personal way too. So the reason that, and this year we are having the launch of this exhibition, of this museum, virtual museum. So the reason why I spent some time on the major physical events, not just because they are physical events, but also wanted to emphasize our investment in the arts. We strongly believe in the importance of the arts in preserving cultural memory, which is why we have commemorated partition through films in 2019, through visual art in 2021, and virtual music this year. And as you know, a museum incorporates many different kinds of media and art forms. We have actually also done a number of online events, a wide range actually, a workshop, online concert with Aurgho Jyoti and friends, a dance program, but most interestingly, last year, 2 very special online events, Children's Day special, where I was in conversation with Monjira Shaha, an author, and her book Choto De Border, which basically is about children's response to the border, children in border districts, their response to the border. And we celebrated the 50th anniversary of Bijoy Dibosh on 16 December itself, through a discussion of Tanvir Mukammal's films on Mukti Juddho. He was in conversation with Sanjay Mukhopadhyay. Now we had to do so many online events because just a year into our existence, the pandemic happened, and like most other organizations, we were forced to do digital mode. So this has been the journey so far. 3+ years, 8 events, and here we are. The virtual Kolkata Partition Museum has been our most ambitious undertaking so far. It's, as has already been said, it's a collaboration between KPMT and AUR, or Architecture Urbanism Research, an architecture firm with offices in both New York and New Delhi, and headed by Aurgho Jyoti, who divides its time between the US and India. We have his partner here, Shubhrati, where are you? Who we are all actually meeting for the first time. Very happy to have you with us, Shubhro. Now the thing is, it is Aurgho who approached us with the idea and with a proposal for collaboration. Now, this is how it happened. He had already come to know about us, and he had read about us in our on our website, a few media reports. But he also met me at an online event, which was organized by the 1947 Partition Archive in July 2020, where I was invited as a speaker, and he was there as audience. So he connected with me after the event, and what followed was months of discussions and conversations, and culminating in a presentation that he gave to the entire trust. We were all very impressed with that, and we decided to go ahead with the collaboration. And so we announced the collaboration early 2021, and the work began in April 2021. I would just like to say one thing here, that the proposal could not have come at a more appropriate time. Because in the pandemic, we were already wondering how to move, what was the way forward, how best to take our work forward, and this seemed to be the perfect answer. So Aurgho, this is the virtual museum is Aurgho's brainchild, but it could not have been possible, and we could not have stood where we are today, because it's still work in progress, but for the work and enormous hard work of a fantastic team, multidisciplinary team, who share a common bond, which is a deep connection with partition in life and work. I just wanted to say that there is just one thing about last year's exhibition, was that the 12th day exhibition that we had last year, it was very well received. We also had two online events, and both were moderated by Dr. Aurgho Jyoti. But more than that, when I say well received, I just don't mean media reports. We are a small organization, and we do not have the money power and muscle power to, really make it a very big splash in the media. But apart from several media reports, the biggest, draw for us, the biggest reward for us was there was a lot of citizen testimonials on Facebook, like people who came, saw, and liked. So I just wanted to add that while I was talking about events, I just wanted to add that was perhaps one of the most rewarding aspects of the events that we had so far. Anyway, to come back to the team, I just called out Shubhro. So we have a 13-member team. We started out that way. So Aurgho and I have the chief coordinators. Shubhro is Aurgho's partner at AUR. He's an architect. We have a number of architects. There is another, Arifin Moinuddin. So is Shayantan, but Shayantan is also a scenographer, and his work is very eclectic. Right now, he's heavily invested in building a storm shelter in the Sundarbans, and has just received a grant for that. We are all very proud that our team members are doing such great work even beyond our project. There is Dr. Aurgho Jyoti, who is Associate Professor and Head of the Department of History at Diamond Harbour Women's University. Anindita knew about our work right from 2017. When I had actually proposed the idea for the first time in an international conference at Indian Museum to commemorate the 70th year of partition, and I'd co-convened that with Jonathan and Shikha Bandyopadhyay. And she had attended that conference, and she'd also written a report on that, and she followed our work. So when I approached her last year, she agreed immediately. And I must say that that's the same with all the others that I've approached, Shomanla, Devanshi, Shonamna. But I want to add one thing here. Her contribution to the content creation has been immense. I'm not going to talk about the components because the team is going to talk in detail about that. But I just want to say that two of the three main components, Oral History Project and even galleries, in both her contribution has been immense. And one of the main reasons that she was approached to be part of the team was that she has done pioneering work on the Northeast and the partition experience of the Northeast. She already had 2 books, and that is that we wanted that perspective to be included in our museum, which is why her presence. There is Devashish Mukherjee. He is a multidisciplinary artist based out of Delhi. He couldn't join us today. Unlike Shomanlo and Shubhrati, who have actually come from Delhi to be part of this program, he could not. He also has been actually associated with us for more than 2 years now, because he's one of the artists, as I just said, he was one of the participating artists of the art exhibition that we had. And we have a bunch of young and very talented and bright research scholars. Shumanlu is here, Shumanlu Mukhopadhyay, and they're all like, they've just given their PhDs, finished their PhDs, or about to, they're in that phase of life, transition phase of life between research and working and starting their teaching careers. So Shumanlu actually wanted to work with us right from 2018 when the trust was born. And it's only in 2021 that we could give him an opportunity to do so. He has just submitted his PhD from IIT Delhi, Department of Humanities and Social Sciences. There is Asmita and Shagota Lokhi. Shagota Lokhi unfortunately has COVID. She could not join. Asmita has already, she's in the US. She just started a PhD at Rutgers. But for most of the 60-70 months, they were doing their MPhil at CSSS. Center for Studies in Social Sciences. There is Mohana Chatterjee, who is a PhD scholar in the History Department of Harvard Women's University and working on supervision of online Gita. There is Gitanjali Roy, who is Assistant Professor in the Department of English, ICCR University Tripura, and there is Firdausi Akhtar Wasim, who is also a PhD student, but she's doing her PhD at the Department of History, Assam University, Silchar. So this is the team, but this has been a virtual team. So this virtual museum is being put together by a virtual team. Today is the first, we have never met. The whole team has never ever met. Today is the first time that 5 of us are together. It's a regulated day in our lives, because some of the members have been friends before, and we have met in little permutations and combinations here and there sometimes, but we have been a virtual team, and I really don't need to go into the limitations of working virtually. We've all faced that for more than 2 years. But it remains a challenge, is what I'm trying to say. It has really been a challenge to work as a virtual team for 1.5 years. And our locations have been like mostly 3 continents, India, US, Canada. So New York, Toronto, Delhi, Kolkata, Silchar, Agartala. For a very short time it was Manchester, and Honorable Jahannar Kabir was with us in advisory capacity. So this, our work is not done, it's still work in progress, but for as long as we are a team and we're working on this is going to stay. I really wish we could meet sometimes, we could have coffee together, we could argue, talk, whatever. Anyway, the full team can't happen, we have to make the best of it. Challenge, I think there has been one, apart from the virtual, being virtual, working virtually, I think the biggest challenge has been time. And I mean that in 2 senses, but there are 2 aspects. One is finding a time that is convenient for all to meet. That was easily sorted and quite early. The second has been the most difficult, which is finding time, making time for this project in addition to full-time jobs and occupations. So I want to talk about the first little bit, because that has been our process. We meet once in 3 to 4 weeks. Last few months it has been more frequent. Very early on we decided it's going to be Saturday evenings IST, and then we switched on to Friday evenings IST. We have marathon meetings. 1.5 hours is the scheduled time, but most of the time it has gone beyond 2 hours. Talking about this, the other thing about the time, which is balancing professional deadlines with the deadlines of this project, and there has been many in the last couple of months. That has been really very tough, and this has been a labor of love. If ever there was one, this project is a labor of love, and the labor has been enormous labor which has tested the love really. Because this is not a funded project. So we say here we are supported by Tata Steel. So Tata Steel, what it has done is it is supporting us with its event and the websites, some strictly technical aspects of the website, not the design and content creation. So, I am extremely grateful to each and every member of the team and thank them from the bottom of my heart for having done this work for a greater cause. And the other thing is, and I also want to, I think this is the right time to thank Tata Steel. They have been with us, they have held our hand throughout. So they supported us with the film fest, they supported us with the art exhibition last year, but it was also, Imami Foundation was also there. And they have been doing this for the third time. I really wish at least one representative from their organization is with us here today. Unfortunately, it could not happen. And the other point I will say, it's not a challenge really, but a part of the experience, which is, we are all the team members are working for this kind of project for the very first time. So we have experts, of course. We are experts in their own field. But we are all working for a virtual museum for the first time. It means that we have been constantly learning new things along the way. We are learning as we go along actually. But it has also been, this learning curve has also been very exciting and enriching for us all. I would end by saying that, the virtual museum, there's a lot of confusion about this, so I want to clarify, is that what we are doing, we are saying launching virtual museum, but actually the website link is not being made available now, because the work is not complete. What we are doing today is basically announcing the project publicly, because we have decided that we will not talk about it until we have advanced a little with our work. We could have talked about it from last year itself, but we have, we didn't do that very consciously. So we are basically announcing the project, and 2 months down the line, like this year, the work itself is going to be complete only towards the end of the year. Part of it will be made available probably 2 months from now. We are targeting that. So there's still some months of work left, at least. But one thing is that this virtual museum is going to advance the work of the future museum, physical museum, because that's still our ultimate aim, to a considerable extent, at least in terms of content. But of course the design is unique and it's going to remain virtual. Thank you. Actually, I wanted to make this a very short preface. It has been a long one. Thank you for your patience in hearing me out. I would now ask Aurgho's presentation to start. So his presentation, like everybody's presentation, is important because we are a team, but I think his is the most crucial one because he's going to talk, apart from content, about design, and that is, you are going to get glimpses into the design of the museum, which is very unique. Thank you so much.
And most importantly, thank you everyone for joining. I would like to take a moment and highlight a wonderful multidisciplinary team of historians, literary scholars, artists, scenographers, and architects that have dedicated their time towards a meaningful citizens' initiative, the virtual Kolkata Partition Museum. The whole is definitely larger than the sum of its parts. KPM and AUR acknowledged the 1947 Partition Archive in facilitating the bringing together of Rituparna Roy and Aurgho Jyoti to an online event in 2020. I will start my presentation by sharing my screen. The virtual Kolkata Partition Museum provides a platform to experience and to comprehend the partition of Bengal through an immersive virtual environment. It memorializes the specificity of Bengal's partition history and its aftermath, and emphasizes the continuities between West Bengal and Bangladesh. The project's larger objective is to develop collective memory that is cognizant of our shared history, acknowledging partition as central to modern identity in the subcontinent. With a regional approach to globally resonant issues, it helps create public opinion by alluding to the refugee crisis, communal violence, identity politics, partition, and formation of new nation states seen through the lens of Bengal. I would like to talk about 5 broader subjects that we have been engaged with during the process of conceptualizing the museum. Bengal partition, specificities and continuities, museum from a colonial to an ethical project, border, physical space transformation, subaltern space, physical and cultural space of refugees, time and memory, identity and fragmented replay. I would like to start with an image by American photographer Margaret Bourke-White of Punjab, but not of Bengal. The idea is to highlight that partition discourse in literature, movies, and popular media is heavily focused on Punjab. Our current project aims to highlight the specificity of Bengal's partition while crafting transnational regional identities. Bengal, unlike Punjab, was partitioned twice, and the migration post-partition was protracted with a porous border that continues to this day. I will scroll through a series of images from Bengal's partition that is often not a part of mainstream narrative. West Bengal and Bangladesh each have their nuances of life, however fabric, food, and music tie them across imaginary lines of borders. These tangible and intangible continuities across the border define the commonalities set against the backdrop of rupture caused by political division. The division is well documented in literature and movies of the region. However, through this project, we aim to highlight the continuities. Next, we look at the museum as a colonial project to an ethical project. Museum, the form in which we know them today, is predominantly a colonial project. Reflections in ancient history reveal it as a monarchical project of cataloging royal collections. The image on the top left is the museum in Alexandria, which formed the basis of the formation of the museum that we know in current day. The image on the top right is that of a museum which was a royal collection, a monarchical museum by the Neo-Babylonians when they were documenting earlier Mesopotamian civilizations. The 2 images on the bottom are images from the cabinet, illustrations of the Cabinet of Curiosities in earlier days. The Cabinet of Curiosities, starting out as a living room museum of the naturalists and the adventurers, was a Renaissance and European Enlightenment project. The project of memorialization can be seen throughout history with the building of big 3 arches. But it is only in the post-World War II era that we have seen the proliferation of memorialization projects, most predominantly with the Jewish museums across the world. Similarly, in the latter half of the 20th century, we have seen living history museums as an archaeo-historical project. In all of this, museums have rarely been a pure ethical project. The oral histories of the subaltern hope to change that for the current virtual museum. Border, the physical space transformation. The border has existed as a statistical line that has often divided people of similar ethnicities and cultural practices. Nation states and as political constructs have prioritized geography over ethnography. The creation of a new border has physically transformed regions, cities, towns, villages, hinterland, no man's land, and the actual border. From the creation of temporary and permanent refugee settlements to the desertion and reoccupation of buildings and neighborhoods, the architecture and the urban environment has been transformed by the involuntary migration process. These are images of refugee settlements within the city of Kolkata and outside the city in its hinterlands post-partition. On the left, you have an image of a neighborhood in Dhaka that was deserted and further reoccupied after partition. On the right, you have a map showing the Radcliffe Line in the context of Bengal. Subaltern space. The image on the screen is a refugee settlement colony in Andaman and Nicobar Islands. By subaltern space, we not only refer to the physical space and architecture created by refugees in a completely new environment, but also the cultural space that they create and help define the social structure of communities. The current project places people's narratives at the epicenter, highlighting oral histories, the destiny of refugees, mass migration, human genocide, and how places experienced violence, desertion, and reoccupation. We aim to learn how to learn from the subaltern and create enabling conditions for agency by highlighting their stories. Time and memory. Memory in its collective form is harnessed to create a coherent identity, national narrative, or a place in the world. However, the processes of memory are frequently manipulated and intervened into for urgent purposes in the present. On the screen, you see images of snippets of fragments of habitation and fragments of means of migration that are within the archaeologies of memory, the central segment of the museum. Through the project, we create fragments as opposed to a recreation of the past. This stems from the fundamental understanding of how memory works. It acts as a fragmented replay of the past and not as a continuous creation. We will quickly look at the structure of the museum and how it has been divided into different galleries. I will start with the event gallery that is to the right, oral history project and visual art. The oral history project would be further elaborated by Anindita and Shumanlo, and the visual art gallery that has been curated by Shayankan and Devashish will be further elaborated as well. The events gallery highlights major events related to the partition of Bengal, which are represented as sub-galleries. These events include 1905, First Partition of Bengal, 1943 Bengal Famine, 1946 Direct Action Day, 1947 Independence and Second Partition of Bengal, 1958 Dondokaranya Project, 1971 Liberation War of Bangladesh, and 1979 Orissa. The Oral History Project. The Oral History Project is not only specific to those affected by partition in Bengal, but also more specifically to the subaltern populations or population of migrants. We are highlighting oral histories of those marginalized voices that suffered the most and continue to do so in an aftermath of drawing imaginary and arbitrary lines on land. A great content team has collected interviews, and some partition scholars have dedicated their personal oral history research for the project. This is a snippet from the website where you see a wheel of images. Once you click on an image, you go to the oral history page of that particular person. These are images of people that have been interviewed throughout the process. Anindita and Shumala will elaborate further. I wanted to briefly talk about how images were extracted from videos to highlight particular emotions. And once we have these images, we were translating them through a pixelated process on concrete surfaces on the inside of the archaeologies of memory, which is the central space of the museum. The images that you see are of Gauri Mandal, who migrated to Dondokaranya. Visual art gallery will be elaborated by Shankar and Devashish later on, but the way we have structured it is we have divided it into modern, contemporary, and children art gallery. We will now transition into the design of the virtual museum and start with the initial sketches of the project. Architecture exists in time as much as in space. Spatiotemporal compression in a virtual medium and atmospheres of austere materiality and light creates a ground for augmented experiences that trigger cultural and material memory. A visitor will navigate in a hybrid immersive world. The immersive environment of an endless spatial field informed the conception of space. A circle and a sphere as classical and directionless geometries formed the basis of spatial boundaries. The visitor enters concentric worlds of time represented by concentric spherical shells with distributed openings acting as thresholds between each layer. The concentric spaces act as thresholds in time, a period of history represented by the dominant material memory, pre-colonial, colonial, and post-colonial technology. The pre-colonial layer addresses shared heritage through ancient and medieval material history in a textured palimpsest of earth, bricks, laterite, and terracotta. The image on the screen is a sampling of different texture of earth in different parts of Bengal. The image is the entrance to the virtual museum that shows a stacking of different layers of earth from different parts of Bengal. The current images show textures of terracotta and laterite temples in Bankura and brick temples in Bankura. On the extreme left, you have the ruins of Chandraketu. You have the terracotta facade from Bankura. Then you have the plastered imperial white walls in and around Kolkata. The colonial layer is a texture of plastered imperial white walls, and the post-colonial is represented in grained concrete, a neutral material that morphs into any structural shape representative of liberation and modernization, and concurrently a neutral background for recreating the present and the future. These series of images show the tight concentric spaces navigating the material memory of periods. Seen here is the layer of textured brick on the right and layered earth on the left. Similarly, we see an opening through the brick layer with the terracotta and laterite layer on the right and earth on the left. Liminal space. Liminality is the state of the in-between, the threshold between two states. In such a liminal space, one stands at the threshold between the prior structure and the new. Such structures organize identity, temporality, and continuity, and community. The project employs strategies to implement liminal spaces between its many concentric layers and worlds. The concentric spherical spaces in the museum representing historical periods end in an open transition expanse, the liminal space. The depth of such a liminal space allows one to view for the first time all the chronological material shells as a layered backdrop, as seen in the current image, providing a broader view of history through material memory. The transition space is also an interval that serves as an experiential split between the tightly spaced concentric spherical shells and the central core of the museum. The spherical wall surface defining the edge of the central core of the museum acts as a visual barrier, one that piques curiosity and unravels gradually as a narrative as one journeys across. The ramp starts and ends at the same point in plan, only displaced vertically by the act of climbing. Archaeologies of memory, fragments of transportation, and fragments of habitation. The central core of the Partition Museum is conceived as an archaeological site with fragments of memory expressed as fragmented objects. These represent experiences of partition of the subaltern through oral histories, fragments of habitation, and fragments of means of migration. The objects are rendered neutral gray to highlight the form and not the details. The central space is accessed by a ramp sandwiched between two concentric spherical walls. The oral histories are expressed as pixelated portraits embedded in concrete. The user navigates through a crowd of human installations. Seen in the image is the archaeological site with fragments of houses, refugee settlements, and transportation needs. The image focuses on the ruins and accompanying fragmented objects. This is a close-up view of the curved wall along the edge, which provides a panorama of images of refugees, of people who were interviewed for the project. And the images have been pixelated and embedded onto concrete to provide a sense of permanence. The roof of the central space is a field of floating cylinders in a gravity-free space. Each cylinder is made with earth from a specific province in Bengal. A circular body of water is elevated at the center, surrounded by a panoramic wall of refugees embedded in concrete. The water reflects the images and also the earth above, a condition that inverses physical reality. The concentric steps descend towards the center, eventually disappearing under the reflection pool, with a final experience of contemplation as one exits through a dark and compressed space. Thank you, everyone. That was the end of my presentation. I would like to end it with a snippet of the website, which will be launched later in October.
Thank you, Aurgho. Thank you, Ritu. A very good evening to all of you, and once again, thank you very much for joining us today. I'm sure by now you have a brief understanding of the V-KPM, its background, the context, and its design and architecture. Through this presentation part, I will talk about some of the highlights and some important elements of the project, the design aspects. Materials. One of the influential aspects in the design of V-KPM can be attributed to the value of material choices. Architecture outlives humanity as through surviving ancient civilization towns, robust edifices, and the plethora of heritage. The materials like bricks, earth, terracotta, laterite, white plastered walls, concrete represents the physical environment of different eras, from historic times to pre-independence to post-independence and finally to the current time. The different concentric circles constructed with these materials lets people walk through the different physical timestamps, gradually eliminating the indifferences, leaving them with just pure human experience. The use of soft materials like jute reminds us the industrial past of the subaltern segment of our society. Fragments of habitation. Partition is a point in history which signifies a sudden change in the physical environment of the society, where old permanent habitats like rural Bengal houses were destroyed and new temporary, semi-temporary settlements were created. Using the structural frames of houses and temporary structures as installations allows us to experience the physical transformation during partition. Fragments means of migration. Partition also signifies a moment in history where a huge migration of people happened. A lot of different means of transportations were used, like by foot, bullock carts, buses, boats, regular hand-pulled carts, trucks, in a very unprecedented manner. These fragments of partition once again used as installations, which adds to the experiences of pure human suffering. With this note, I would like to end this presentation on the design part of V-KPM. Thank you all. If you have any questions regarding the design, please I am here to answer them. Thank you.
I'm Anindita here, and I'm here today to talk about the content of the Virtual Partition Museum and our oral history project. So first, my team, I'm actually extremely grateful to my team as they have bestowed the responsibility on me. And as Aurgho has rightly pointed out, I'm just here to elaborate on points raised by the two captains of our ship, Dr. Rituparna Roy from KPM and the other collaborator of this virtual KPM project, Aurgho Jyoti, and his company AUR. But the first point that I wish to mention here that here in this oral history project team, we actually try to portray or showcase the human side of the partition, the miseries of the refugees. But at the outset, I wish to mention here that in this particular group, we actually experience a huge human side of the team members. Especially here, I wish to mention the contribution of the research scholars, 6 very bright and very promising research scholars, and they have worked with us voluntarily without any remuneration. And on behalf of the oral history team, I'm so grateful as they have shared their contents, their materials, their interviews, which they actually have collected for their PhD studies. And in most of the cases, they are not done with their PhDs, but still they were so generous to share their interviews and share their contents with us. So first, I wish to thank them, these 6 research scholars, and we are so lucky that Shumalo is here today, and he will present here after me. So that is I think that is the most human side of this, and in a way, we actually try to, like the way Rituparna has pointed out, that we all try to come up with a great work for a cause. So I think all these 12 team members, they actually worked very hard, and they have shared their insights, their resources and everything to make it possible. So that is the first point I wish to mention here. But when I'm talking about the content team, so let me start with the basic concepts of the virtual Kolkata Partition Museum, and let me elaborate that what we tried to do and what was the geographical location that we tried to cover, and what was the time span. So all these things are very important for us when we try to write down about the whole content of this virtual museum team. So let me first point out that we since I trained as a historian, so I have a problem to talk about the background. So as we all know, so if we read the partition literature, narratives, history, historiography, as we all know that always the key focus is on the partition studies, it's either on Punjab or on Bengal. But for the Bengal side, since for this particular virtual partition museum, we have targeted Bengal. But for this Bengal side, whatever we try to read or we try to see, that always the stress is entirely on West Bengal. But in this particular project, in this particular for this particular content, we actually conceived Bengal as not as West Bengal. We tried to incorporate the East Bengal, which was very popular as East Bengal as a geographical location, as a space.
So we tried to incorporate geographical areas from Bangladesh, like we tried to incorporate Chittagong Hill Track and obviously the other parts of East Bengal. And obviously, as Rituparna has mentioned, that I tried to contribute more on Northeast India. We tried to incorporate Assam and Tripura. And since we worked a little bit on even the Chakma refugees who have migrated from Chittagong Hill Track, so in a way we tried to cover Arunachal Pradesh a little bit and of course West Bengal. But another key focus of this project, when I will talk about the oral history team, I'll mention that we didn't actually cover only Assam and Tripura. When we try to talk about Northeast India, it is one of our team members, Pitosi, she has worked on Meghalaya as well. So since she worked on the borderlands, so in a way we could cover actually Assam, Tripura, a bit Arunachal Pradesh and Meghalaya as well. Another thing I wish to mention here that one of our project team members, oral history team members, Mohana Chatterjee, who works with me for her PhD, her works, we are actually very grateful that she has shared her field work with us and some very, very important interviews with us. And her work is, I think, that is another strength of our project, that she conducted lots of interviews in Dandakaranya, and she has shared some interviews with us. But in those interviews, she has actually shared some different aspects, which was very important for us as a project. So let me start with the content team, and I'm really grateful to my all my team members, as they actually continuously try to give me inputs about the content. And when I was writing it, so it was like going back to them, asking for their feedbacks, and they always came up with beautiful ideas which actually helped us as a team. So for the content team, we have actually decided to start with the 1905 partition in Bangla, what we say the Bongo Bhongo or the Swadeshi Andolon. And our intention was to understand that how or why the colonial government, they tried to like incorporate Assam and East Bengal, and how like that partition of 1905, it became very, very crucial to understand the human relationships, the community relationships, and how actually it impacted the 1947 final, like the second partition, how you call it. So that was the key focus. And what I think is that when we try to write down, or when we try to make galleries on Assam and Tripura, so that background actually of 1905 partition, when we actually talked about a new province of Assam and East Bengal, it actually helped us to define that why the state government of Assam, they behaved very differently during the 1947 partition, and like why their treatment towards the refugees was actually very different from the treatment of the Bengali refugees who chose to migrate to West Bengal and Tripura. So that part is, I think, very, very important for our gallery, for that content gallery. But we actually try to divide this content in such a way so that when someone will enter to our museum, he or she can get a continuation, or he or she can experience a continuation of history through our content, or through our different galleries. So we try to we try to actually remember that aspect. So after 1905, we wrote a little bit on 1911, and we try to show that how the change of capital from Kolkata to Delhi impacted West Bengal or Bengal in a way. And we have incorporated lots of aspects or events which were actually maybe of political nature, but which contributed in a way in the larger partition politics. But the most fascinating part, I believe, for us in this gallery before partition, so we decided to incorporate 1943 famine. And we tried to argue that the city of Kolkata, especially during the famine, so it was for the first time the city of Kolkata, they have experienced a very different kind of migration. So when we talk about the migration of the refugees during the partition or especially after partition, but we try to show how the city of Kolkata, they got seasoned with a very different kind of migration of unskilled laborers from villages, not from the urban cities during the 1943 famine. And we try to connect these food scarcity and like other issues related that kind of migration with the partition migration or the migration of the refugees. So I think that connection and that part of the content is very, very interesting, and probably it will be somehow kind of new for the larger audience, especially who are not that seasoned with the partition history of India. Will search anywhere from maybe Brazil, anywhere. We talked about it in our team meetings that how we will try to portray it. But I think that's a very, very interesting point, and we worked very hard towards the implementation part. So when our website will be ready, so you'll be able to experience, I believe. After that, we obviously gave stress to the Calcutta riot of 1946 and the partition politics, obviously. So that part was it was actually mentioned in a very different way, I believe, as we didn't try to show the 1946 riots like the way we read in history books, or we tend to write in history books. The perceptions were different. We collected lots of newspaper reports and lots of photos are there, so that anyone from, especially from outside South Asia, he or she can get she can feel get a feel that what actually happened during that time. After that, I wish to mention that we have actually created a separate section on Northeast India, as especially on Assam, as the Assam part while we deal with the partition history, the Assam part is always very, very different because of the Silat referendum, as that referendum happened in such a way that as if the government or the political parties of the then India, so they were trying to give importance to the opinions of the mass people, but it actually didn't happen. So we thought that part will be very, very interesting for a normal audience to know and to understand. So we made a very different section on Assam, and also we tried to show that what happened to those Buddhist Chakmas or Hajangs who were in Chittagong hill tract. Their percentage of population was huge, but somehow Chittagong got connected with Pakistan and they had to migrate for different reasons. So we tried to highlight that portion. I don't think in any, as we know that lots of archives are there and lots of things are going on around partition by many groups, and all of them are doing brilliant jobs. But I think that our partition museum, the content of this museum will be very, very different, because we try to address all these things which are not that popular, or general people are not that aware of all these things. Maybe the political scientists, social scientists, and the historians, so they read and write about it, but that's generally not for the mass people. And we chose to tell this narrative or show this narrative up till the Morichapi incident. And as Aurgho has pointed out, that we gave lots of stress on the Dandokaranyo project and on the deserter refugees. As we all know that at some point of time the central government and all the state governments, they decided that they can't accommodate these refugees anymore and they had to go. So Dandokaranyo was a very different kind of terrain. And that project was very, very different from that from Andaman project or project in Bethia, as lots of other projects were there. But Dandokaranyo conceived in such a way that it was actually made for the refugees. But we tried to show that what actually happened to those refugees who were there. As we read some of the write-ups, some of the autobiographies, memoirs of especially the Dalit writers. So we can get a sense of it, but actually through this kind of of contents and which actually got supported by the oral history team. So we tried to show that what actually happened to them. And Morichapi incident was very, very important for us as we got lots of new informations about these Bengali refugees and also about that event. So through that content, I am now coming to the oral history team. Here I am going to talk about three research scholars, Ms. Mohana Chatterjee, Ms. Firdausi Akhtar Wasid, and Gitanjali Roy. So let me start with Firdausi's work. Firdausi's work is very, very important in a way that she is doing a PhD in Assam University under Professor Sajal Nath on the borderlands. So when I saw all the videos and read her transcripts, but what I wish to mention here in front of this erudite audience, that her works actually talks about very new things. We don't know that how these borderlands are and how those lives experience every day. So she actually portrayed lots of new things. I wish to mention one or two, as I am supposed to talk for maybe 10 to 15 minutes. So in Firdausi's work, in her oral history narratives, two things are so important. Number one, she actually shared with us one interview of a Muslim man who migrated to East Pakistan after the partition, and he came back, and after coming back he realized that his home obviously was snatched by someone else, and then he suffered. That's a very usual story. But what is unusual in his narrative, which I found very, very interesting, is that Firdausi wrote in the abstract that he was after the announcement of the constitution, and especially after the Delhi Pact of 1950, which promised that the minorities, if they come back, they will get their properties and everything. So she mentioned that he realized that he became other in this subcontinent, and he lost everything, his lands and houses and everything, and he actually suffered with a very strange kind of identity politics. One, because of he was Muslim, he is Muslim, and two, which was more important, as he was a Bengali in Assam. So that part I think very, very important. Second thing which I mentioned, which I want to mention about Firdausi's work. So she was telling me that how for the borderlanders and for the for border people, how the concept of time is very, very different from the way we conceive time. So for most of the borderlands, they always maintain a time of 4 p.m. For all of us, the time 4 p.m. is 4 p.m. But for them, that 4 p.m. that time means that you can't do anything before next day. So these kind of narratives are very, very different, and I don't think that we can get to know or get to see these kind of narratives anywhere. So I wish to mention that she worked too hard, and she visited so many places that at times she felt that her life was at risk. So I really wish to mention these, as she did all these field works for our KPP team for free, and she has shared all these very, very valuable materials. And I wish all of you who are here that you will actually check with all these things when we'll be online. Second work I wish to mention about Gitanjali's work, Gitanjali Roy's work, who worked on Tripura. So that's another terrain. And Gitanjali, through her oral narratives, she tried to argue that how the experience of the refugees of Tripura are totally different from the refugees who tried to migrate to West Bengal and Assam, and who eventually got settled down in West Bengal and Assam. So I just wish to mention only one interview which she shared with us of a lady, and she said that we always think that the War of Liberation of 1971 was a huge event for the refugees, and both for the host societies and for the Sharonarthis or the shelter takers. But that lady, she has pointed out that the war of liberation time was like a bliss for her. Why? As she was in Koilashahar, Tripura, and she realized that our camp was just nearby for the Sharanarthis, and she realized that some of her neighbors, some of her relatives were there in that camp. So it was like a celebration time for her, and it was like a huge opportunity for her to meet her friends, her relatives, her neighbors. When they left after the liberation war for their home, so she was very sad as she can't meet them anymore. And the third one, as Shumalu will elaborate his works and also the works of Ashmita and Shagota Lokhi, another two very bright PhD scholars. So the last scholar about whom I wish to mention is Mohana Chatterjee, Miss Mohana Chatterjee. As she covers too many things. Like in one interview, she tried to show, like that the way Aurgho, when Aurgho was presenting, her photo was there. So she tried to show that how the gender discrimination was so prominent in case of the refugees who migrated to Dandakaranya. So that is the one thing, and government was not impartial when they were distributing relief and rehabilitation and other kind of facilities. Number two, how these refugees, they actually suffered from different kind of facilities, obviously, but the most important thing, how the tribals of Dandakaranya, the original domiciles of Dandakaranya, the hosts in that society, they reacted towards these Bengali refugees. As the central government conceived a very lucrative project, and the state governments, all the state governments of West Bengal, Assam and Tripura, they tried to show the refugees that like how good their condition will be if they decide to or chose to migrate to Dandakaranya. But what was the actual scenario? But the third point which I mentioned, I wish to mention about Mohana's work is very important, as we always perceive or conceive the condition of the Morichapi refugees in a very, very different way. But one of our respondents, he categorically said that you know that Morichapi incident was like a eye-opener for us. And she asked why. He replied that after that Morichapi incident, actually, we realized that we'll have to settle down here. We'll have to till this land. We'll have to make it a small Bengal or a green Bengal, as we don't have any place to go back. So for those families, that Morichapi incident was like a bliss, as they could figure out that they don't have anywhere to go. They can't go back to West Bengal, and which was their dream. So they will have to stick to that land only. And after that, the final realization of the respondents, I'm talking about two respondents here. I'm intentionally not taking their names, as it will be monotonous and kind of boring. So they finally said that you know, so if you compare our conditions, the refugees or our neighbors of the oral history team, and I wish to mention here that I'm just so proud of my team members, and I'm so proud that we came together and we are celebrating today for a greater cause, for a bigger cause. Thank you so much.
So good evening everyone, and thank you for your time. I must confess, it's indeed a privilege and an honor to be in such august company today, and it's fitting that I am speaking right after Professor Ghoshal, or Anit Dadi as I fondly call her, because she is the one who has been supervising us during this entire tenure where we were gathering oral history narratives. Now, the title signifies oral history projects or older narratives. You get an idea of the ideological imperative, the motivation of the team members. We aspired to focus on interviews which were less documented. Hence, we had Mohana traveling to Dandakaranya, Fitoshi and Gitanjali securing narratives from Assam and Tripura. However, with the course of time, we also realized that to bring out a more comprehensive, a more holistic picture of refugee experience in West Bengal, we also need to shift our attention to sites which some would argue have been documented. So Shagota, Ashmita and I were entrusted with the responsibility of doing that, and since I live in Delhi at present, I decided we would start with CR Park. Ashmita did a recce of the entire CR Park as she stays there, and she introduced me to Reena Dattorai. And we decided to interview her because hers was a unique story of a Bengali who migrated from West Pakistan or present-day Pakistan. And those who have worked on partition, we time and again see that there is this binary between Punjab and Bengal, with the overemphasis of violence when we talk about the partition in Punjab. But when I interviewed Reena Dattorai, I realized that why they are so occupied with this idea of violence. Because Reena Dattorai's narration is a graphic presentation of the violence she experienced. Unlike in West Bengal, where the violence was more psychological, her was more palpable. The violence entered her home. The violence entered her room, where she used to get dressed every day. She saw the rioters storming into her house. She somehow could escape Lahore in 1947 and come to Delhi and then settle down in Calcutta. But I think that's a very unique aspect of her narrative, which we need to keep in mind when we are listening to her stories when the exhibition, when the museum comes to light before everyone. Again, when we look at the very idea of conceptualizing this museum, because we believe that there's a lack of commemorative culture surrounding the partition. But when I interviewed someone like Nikhil Chandra, he's here among us, we understand that was not the case for those who had migrated. Nikhil Chandra had migrated had come to Waliganj government camp, and there the refugees, as they were struggling to find a footing in the city, they decided to form a club named Sanghoshri to give themselves a collective identity. And later, when they were rehabilitated together to Basrodi in 1954, interestingly, they carried the club with them. And if you visit the area where he stays, you'll find the club still there, with the year of establishment being 1949, echoing back the years where the refugees found the club in the government's camp itself. At the same time, we have narratives like that of Aurgho Jyoti, the proud owner of RMGC Boshak, a shop that we've all encountered in Guriahat. And when he migrated, he decided to carry his family trade with him. He decided to trade in tangled saris. The name itself is suggestive of the cross-border connection that his business aspires to connect. It's echoing in a way what we have like the Karachi bakery in Hyderabad, India, and the Bombay bakery in Hyderabad, Pakistan. Similar to Aurgho Jyoti's narrative is Biplab Poddar's narrative. Again, very similar stories in a sense that he also has a shop in Goriahat. And both these narratives, to a great extent, challenge this archival documentation that we have regarding the Bengal partition refugees, that they were weak, indolent. In reality, they were quite aspiring, enterprising, and I would say resilient to a great extent, because they did eke out a living for themselves despite everything. And at the same time, when we place these two narratives of Aurgho Jyoti and Biplab Poddar against the narratives of Ritika Saha and Kavita Saha, we get a sense of how women perceive the partition differently. Ritika Saha has faint memories of the partition, but she has imbibed the stories from her parents. She has, with the course of time, she has learned to cope with this identity of refugee Bangal. And during the interview, she says that it took me time to understand why people were not willing to rent out rooms to the family. She did not have a fixated place when she migrated, because no one wanted to give rooms to Bengal refugees, because they would occupy it and never leave. Kavita Saha, on the other hand, associates partition with her marriage, because the marriage apparently facilitated her migration to West Bengal. And interestingly, her family understood that this is perhaps one way of evading the eyes of the rioters who were wreaking havoc in East Pakistan at that point of time during 1960s. So one night when her family decided to migrate, they dressed up in good clothes as if going out to go for an invitation. They locked their house, and sadly Kavita says that none of them ever came back. And in a way, her narratives are extremely personal, powerful, both these narratives, and sensuous and sensitive as well. And I think the plethora of narratives that we have gathered is symbolized through this photo. And I sincerely hope that all of you, when you listen to these narratives, will get a fair idea of what we have aspired to do through our oral history project. And it will be a wonderful collection for future scholars, future historians to look at as well. Thank you.
Mukhopadhyay for that enlightening presentation. We would like to show a recorded video of Gitanjali Roy and Firdausi Akhtar Basid, where they present their part of the oral history project.
Tripura has faced the post-partition tremors not only during 1947, but after the partition in 1949, the decision to join either of the countries was left in the hands of the princely state of Tripura, where on 9th September 1949, Maharani Kanchan Prabha Devi decided to merge with independent India. Since then, people kept relocating themselves from Epar Bangla to Opar Bangla and vice versa. The Bangladesh Liberation War of 1971 made Tripura change demographically and geographically. Tripura was a great helping hand for East Pakistan with the partition. Ever since 1947, Tripura kept facing this dislocation of people from East Pakistan to India and vice versa.
Towards the Kolkata Partition Museum for giving me this opportunity to come up with the partition narratives, more specifically from the parts of Northeast. So, my experience or my association with partition is a very personal, is very personal and emotional for me, because I have grown up with the stories of partition. I have grown up with the stories of trauma, victimhood, chaos and confusions during the time of partition that was happening around the corner. It's mostly because that I have a very personal relationship with the partition, mostly because my grandfather is a victim of 1947 partition of India. However, the generation of partition has almost gone, but the trauma lingers from lingers in nation's memory of its passing from generation to generation. And even I would say that the event is remembered more as partition rather than independence. So the story of Banisuddin Mirza, who is supposed to be my grandfather, is basically talks about the journey of migration of his journey from India to East Pakistan, or the district called Pabna, which is basically now called Bangladesh. So the journey he completed within 9 days, which is along with his family, when my grandfather was only 18 years old. And mostly the journey talks about the sufferings and loss of his own brother while out of starvation or scarcity of food. And then again going to a new land and then settling there for about 6 months. And then again coming back to his own homeland that is called India. So this suffering from one nation to another nation and then coming back to his own home and settling there is, I can still feel the pain when he says his stories. Even I can see the trauma even in his face. Not only these, that there are many stories who shares the same specific essence, which is trauma. The story of Jamil Ahmed, which I have collected from a place called Pathakandi in Assam, talks about the story of losing kinsmen or relatives to a different nation and then meeting them after decades. And again, I would like to quote a story from one of my oral narratives, who says, where there is a lady of around 75 years old. When I asked her that, do you regret of coming to India? Because after the partition, there are many instances which talks about the migration to East Pakistan to India, sharing out of insecurity, out of social insecurity, social injustice, or riots, communal violence. So who shifted to India? And I asked her, do you have any regret? Do you regret of coming to a new land? So then she replied with sorrow. I can still feel the pain. She said that the only regret that I do is that I'll never be able to go back to my homeland where I have born and where I spent my childhood. So here the word home or land is emotion, signifies emotion. So there are number of stories who shares about their trauma, about their pain. So basically my objective of collecting these partition narratives is to come up with a very subaltern perspective of India's partition, specifically from Northeast India. So I would like to thank Kolkata Partition Museum for giving me this opportunity to bring up with a very grounded and a very subaltern perspective, or I would say to give me that opportunity to become the voice of the voicelessness. So voiceless people. So thank you, and I'm looking forward to collect more and more, to bring more and more oral histories of partition from Northeast India, and to share their stories to the world. Thank you.
Up next, we would like to show a recording of Devashish Mukherjee where he introduces the virtual art gallery, followed by a live presentation by Shayantan Moithru, who will talk of the same.
I am Devashish Mukherjee, a multidisciplinary artist based out of Delhi. Co-curating with Shayantan Moithru the art section for the Kolkata Partition Museum has been quite a fascinating journey so far. But unfortunately I couldn't come, and it's certainly my loss. But Shayantan is there today amongst all of you, and he would take you through the works we have kept in this section. Well, primarily there are two sections. One is artworks of the modernists, and the second, the contemporary one. We have chosen the artworks from both India and Bangladesh, and I would like to thank Gallery Aurgho and Jyoti for their generosity, for allowing us to use the images from their archives. Today, I would like to mention that I miss Dr. Rajeshri Mukhopadhyay, who introduced me to the Kolkata Partition Museum.
Yeah, so there's an enormous body of work when it comes to partition. We've gathered different kinds, different aspects of partition theory, especially when different historians are looking at it in several focuses. So we were also looking at people, artists especially, how they react to partition. It's been quite a huge, quite an eclectic body of work which we received or we collected, we happened to find. So this oral narratives or this oral history project itself is a very strong component of this museum space. And what we were looking at architecturally in this museum space, in the virtual museum space, was something where it's almost like a floating scene. So gravity was not bothering us in designing this museum because it was a virtual museum. So we were treating it as much away from gravity, and when Aurgho and me and some of us were thinking about the design of this museum, so it was about this flow. How do we flow into spaces? How do we flow into different thinking processes and all that? So in this visual arts gallery, what kind of artworks should be here? We kind of divided into three segments. Modern is basically all the masters who had actually seen partition at that time and reacted to that kind of work. I will not go too much detail because we're pretty late now, but I want to talk about how contemporary artists are reacting or thinking about partition these days. So the first thing was the modern art section, where of course we have Chitto Prasad. We were very lucky to get these works from various galleries and museums. This was definitely the Great Bengal famine work. And I'll quickly browse through this. Most of you have seen it. This is Somnath's work. Again, what he has felt and what he had seen that time. Then more of Somnath's works. He was also talking about the villagers, the rural people besides the famine works. This is Rakhi Kaur's work. We go forward to Govardhan Ash's work and Shubhi Kasturi's work. And of course, we also managed to get a couple of Joynal Abedin's work. Joynal Abedin was a very important work. He's the Shilpocharya of the Faculty of Fine Arts from Dhaka. He started it. He started also from Kolkata College of Art and then went to Slade School. So he had a very interesting, take. So he kind of started the modernism in Bangladesh. So we have some of these works which you can see. Now, as we are very running short of time, I will just go straight to the contemporary art and how artists now are reacting to several works. So I'll start with this work by Mahbubur Rahman, this artist from Bangladesh, and this is a work which he had conceived when he was basically, I was curating a show in Sikkim, 2010. I invited him to Sikkim, so he got permission, he got the visa from Indian Embassy, but he could never reach Sikkim. The reason was the laws of Sikkim says that a Bangladeshi cannot enter Sikkim. None of us knew that, and this was this invisible border where he was stuck. So he could never enter Sikkim, so we did his work there. It was a public art project that time, and during that time both of us decided at one day that we'll cross borders without a visa and passport. So we did this work later on called No Man's Land project, which is 4 years it took us to get permission and visas, permission from the army, intelligence and everyone. But this is a very interesting work where he's questioning the Radcliffe line and what are these borders. So this work he also did with the currencies he had received from various countries. So this is his personal collection of currencies and he cut them into these pieces where he was looking at these borders of what are these borders, and these borders keeps on changing as well. The borders of the countries keeps on changing. So how a currency, what is the way he reacts to this kind of work. This is a work by Taiba Begum, and his take on, this is a work which he says that, before partition, his idea was like everyone was happy. সবাই ভালো ছিল এইরকম একটা something like that is the kind of a basis of this work, and he works, he specializes, he's famous for using razor blades in a work, but especially these 4 plates, her main this thing was আমরা ভালো ছিলাম. This something of the past which changed after partition or after independence. So this was what we were also discussing about No Man's Land project, where we finally crossed the border. I got like 10 artists from India and 15 artists from Bangladesh came, and we met at a 0 point or like a thing in a border. We crossed fence was in India, Bangladesh, the fencing is 200 feet inside the Indian mainland. So my pitch was, you have to allow me till that international fence or international, border, because this is also part of India. So this was in Sylhet, this was Sylhet border and basically Meghalaya border, a place called Shela, Bholaganj. And so this is again a work of Mahbubur where he makes this fence, and he actually, this is a very interesting work. This is placed in the No Man's Land, and he climbs this, pretending that this is a fence, and then he invites all the people there to come and break the fence. This happened there at that time. Another work by Lippi where, this is a kind of a jali, so you cannot cross, but there's a little hole in the bottom part, like an invisible doorway. A work by a performance artist from Assam. And again, this when we talk about borders, when we talk about migration, we also need to see what is that space, who are the people there. So we were working in Meghalaya, so it was many tribes. So there was Garos, Khasis, there were Hajongs. So this was also a point of transaction. So I mean, we break hills in the Meghalaya, we get extremely high-grade limestone, and we send it to Bangladesh in their cement factories. So how business also is very important, and why people are there, why people are suffering there, who are coming there, what is the language. There's a huge like a difference of this thing. So one of the artists, Shubho from Bangladesh, he was actually working with these laborers there and looking at these stone crushers. So this is a performance he was doing where they were actually throwing stones. And another work by Shubho where he was looking at the two flags of this thing. A work by an artist, and he's like a curator. He's like a curator of a forest, but he went there, and this lonely tree really got him into. This tree is very close to the border, and he put these heavy stones on the tree for some time, and it was as if this tree bears this weight of looking at people from both sides. So this is like this kind of a Vinayak's work. Vinayak stays very close to the border. I mean, he's got a very interesting take. He looks at the border guards. This was also a work, I think, which was used last year for the exhibition.
No, this one new.
This was not?
One new.
I think this was the new work.
Yeah.
This is Motushi's work where he's looking at women. This is Paula's work, and he did a very interesting journey in Bangladesh, and he wrote a very interesting diary, and this work is part of that journey of this thing. He makes these nokshikatas, and he uses various elements and objects to create this installation called Rivers of Blood. Again, Dilip Mitra's work where he's looking at memory. I think Dilip is here today. So very interesting work actually when you look at childhood and memories and how we look at things. Pritika is a very fascinating artist, and she did this work. Actually, she went to 3 countries. So she went to India in a very important place or site. She went to Pakistan, and she also went to Bangladesh. And in Bangladesh, she went to this place called one was Jollad Khana killing field. So basically one of the genocide sites she went to. She also went to the Liberation War Museum, and she was basically making this latex silicon casks of places. So like when she went to this Jollad Khana killing field, which is placed in Dhaka, which is somewhere in Dhaka, and actually after 1971, like 1,500 people were dumped in that place in a water tank. So she went there and she was taking these things, and finally she got them all together, these latex casts, of which kind of when you make this cast, this latex, these things, it's almost like you are a lot of layers of sediment, like dust itself, is history in certain ways. So how you kind of capture that history in your own way. And so finally, after taking these casts of the latex, she goes to a museum in US, which is a completely neutral site now. And you see these 3 countries together, and she calls it this, the memory triad, a very interesting way of looking at partition or like genocide from three countries together, but in a different space. All of them have their own stories in terms of the national history, but there are other stories also. So when these countries, casts from different countries come and you somehow relate to a very interesting form. So very interesting story kind of mix. This is Amrita's work, where she's again how through childhood and from how someone like Ritik Ghatak has always put a kind of this thing in us who have not seen partition, or so her way of looking at migration. This is a very young artist, Orpita, and her work also deals with scars, and she's like weaving these weaving and using this technique of what we use as weft and warp methods of looking at pre-partition and post-partition these things, and memories of her childhood as a child of a migrant family. And I want to end with a work by two works by Devashish, where again Devashish, this is a column which is made of stone and a very soft material like fabric, and how he looks at it like a sense of he looks at it like the great Calcutta killing, and how what was Gandhi's role, and this the other work also, the work on the side is basically his way of looking at the Ratcliffe line, and this is called burnt spaces, and how millions of people got homeless, and his depiction of this thing. We could go on and on with this, but unfortunately I'm seeing we're pretty late now. So thanks a lot everyone for coming. So we have a huge collection of art in this, and this needs to be explored, how contemporary artists actually think about concepts of partition, which is also supported by our oral history projects and what is our reading of history. Thank you.
I cannot thank you enough for being so patient and staying. Many had come, some had to leave, but those of you who are still here, we are very, very happy, and please join us in the lounge for refreshments. And once again, thank you very much.